A new report from the nonpartisan Wisconsin Policy Forum shows Wisconsin's state and local tax burden is still near 2022's historic low. The share of Wisconsinites' income paid in state and local taxes, or the tax burden, rose slightly in 2023, but growth in state residents' income also slowed. For each of the last 9 years, state and local taxes have comprised less than 11% of personal income. You can read the full report on our website. For a deeper look at these tax trends and their impacts, we welcome in Jason Stein, the Vice President and Research Director of Wisconsin Policy Forum. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So overall, let's just start with this. What factors affect Wisconsin's tax burden?
You know, it really comes down to two things. What sort of taxes are being levied at the state and local level, and we track all those. And then what are people's incomes, or what are their ability to pay? And those two things don't always move together, and we look at how they change in relationship to one another. We've been doing that for 50 years.
And what trends in Wisconsin's, tax realm do Wisconsinites need to pay particularly close attention to? What affects them the most?
Sure. Bottom line is the tax burden, taxes as a share of people's ability to pay, is at essentially the lowest level now that it's been in for at least a half century that we have the data for. You know, I think the big things for people to watch typically are the property tax, which is the single biggest tax in Wisconsin, the individual income tax, and to a lesser extent the corporate tax, and then the sales tax, which flies below the radar for a lot of people, but is lower in Wisconsin than in your typical Midwestern state.
Coming up here over the next couple of years, that shared revenue bill that lawmakers passed, Governor Evers signed, is going to really be going into strong effect. We'll be seeing some of those impacts. Can you talk through, as far as sales tax, what those impacts will be?
Sure. So first, in the city of Milwaukee County, there is going to be increase in sales taxes. They're not going to be out of whack with a large Midwestern city, but they'll be now closer to where the typical city's at. City of Milwaukee taxes going up 2%, Milwaukee County taxes 0.4%. That has already taken effect. Then, we see around the other state, there's something like $270 million increase in state aid to local governments. In some, especially small communities, those increases have been very significant. In Madison, not very significant on a per capita basis. In fact, Madison had one of the lowest increase from Act 12 of any, on a per capita basis, per resident of any community in the state.
I want to go back to property taxes here for a second. What can homeowners expect as far as the property tax trends here over the next couple of years here?
Sure. I think in this December's bills, a little bit larger increase than we've seen over the past 10 years. That was driven by fairly significant increase for the school district and for the county, and to a lesser extent the city. Those factors reflect largely inflation pushing up wages for public workers. Government services are very labor intensive, so they're really driven by the cost of labor. The state has increased property tax credits, the school levy credit in particular, and those are going to hold down the net bill that people actually pay. That credit benefits a high property value community like Madison a little bit more than it would the typical community around the state.
Republicans have indicated they plan to release another tax cut proposal. That has been a policy goal for the party this past year. But how does further reducing the tax burden for Wisconsinites impact public services?
Sure. I think the least painful way to see the tax burden fall over time, because it's already at a very low historic level, is to increase incomes, because then people are better able to pay for the cost of the local services and state services that they receive. Income was a little slower for this report that we just did for the year that closed. It was 2%. So even though taxes didn't go up very much, the tax burden ticked up just ever so slightly above that record low level. Going forward, if we don't see the increases in income, and Wisconsin does typically lag the nation there, then you have to look at other things. How can you make government more efficient, or do you just actually reduce the level of service that the public receives, whether that's about their K-12 schools or their state, their state and local roads, whatever it is. And so that's the difficult challenge. There are some areas where the state could do more. We have a number of local governments, 1,850 roughly municipalities. We could do things to help them work together to deliver services. Things like that are always areas where we can grow, but it's going to take time, and it's not going to be easy if incomes, don't grow more quickly.
What factors go into the tax burden that could make it go up? Could put more of a burden on taxpayers?
I mean, certainly inflation, I think, had that effect because it was driving wages up. I think that for the foreseeable future, it's going to remain relatively low. I think, again, what we're seeing now is some tension between the goals that people in the state have as citizens of having taxes that they can afford, but also the kind of school that they want to send their child to. And you do see that in recent years, voters have chosen to increase their local property taxes to ensure the level of service that they want at their local schools. And so, that is something that, because education is such a big part of the overall cost of government, with people choosing to make that decision, that suggests, I think, that it's going to be difficult to lower the tax burden substantially below where it is today. It doesn't necessarily mean it'll rise. And again, it depends on a lot of factors, like what will the economy be 5 or 10 years from now? We'll see.
I want to end on one final statistic that was in this report. Tax collections on beer fell to their lowest level since 1972, even without adjusting for inflation. Pretty surprising for Wisconsin.
Sure, absolutely. For a long time in this state, the taxes on beer have been among the lowest in the nation. Missouri, where Budweiser is headquarters, another state that has had historically low beer taxes. And I think what you're also seeing there is the impact of White Claw and other hard seltzer beverages, which are taxed in a different category from beer. And I think that they've eaten into a little bit of the volume of that drink in stores around the state.
I mean, are we seeing the popularity of beer go down here? Should we be worried?
I think there's still a bright future for beer in Wisconsin, but for sure, one of the fun things about looking at these taxes is you see trends and you see where things are headed in the economy.
All right, Jason Stein, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
My pleasure, thank you.